What do we have? We have demos.
I have a demo.
So I can run. We have a demo. So we put lifetime status. Shouldn't be that long, I believe. And if it takes that long, then we make it shorter. So what do we have? Orchard one. OrchardCore. OrchardCore main branch 2417. It's this one. Add icon.png and fixed preview detail action. Oh yeah. So the packaging was failing because it was expecting the icon. It says you don't have an icon, so now there is an icon by default. Is ContaineedPartIndex behavior for DisplayText over 255 chars. ContaineedPartIndex behavior. Max DisplayText. That's some weird code, but it works. I would have removed that and just added that. But then, so we are using only the first 255 chars, and the migration should also set the length explicitly, at least, because probably it was the value before. Okay. So in the index, we store that. Good. No need to new an email client instance on every email message. And as I'm reading it, I'm seeing that, okay, but still, that doesn't explain on every email. Oh, every email message. I see. So we reuse that provider maybe during a request, and then instead of creating an email client for each email, we use the same email client. And I would go as far as saying that maybe. So then, okay, anytime there is a question like this, we had the same thing on the PR we answered last week. What's the service lifetime from Azure email provider base on the page?
He creates an instance, a new instance every single time. We register it per request. So if you're like sending multiple emails in the same request, you don't need to create a new client every single time.
So that I understand, but I still want to see if we could actually make it. So I still want to see the registration for that. So this one here, base. So we have base one here, and the implementation, for instance, is this one. Default Azure email provider. So we only have, there is an Azure email provider, the default Azure email provider. Let's look at the default one. What Azure communication services. Azure Communication Services, I have no idea what the difference is. Looks exactly the same to me. Now, startup. Here, add email provider option. Adding some options. Why did you see that it was registered? By add provider. Okay. In the configuration thing. Configure default provider. Type option, email provider, type option, type of, add provider. The name. So it's a singleton because it's in the options. That's weird. Or is it that?
No, it's not. It's transient. Every time you request a service, we give you it.
So how do you know? How do you see that?
How did I say that? Because I know where I think there is a resolver that resolve these services. Let me look again. It's been a while.
Which is not DI.
Default E, yeah. So default email provider resolver, and that one creates an instance every single time you request one. Yeah, I'll share the link.
There is another. Okay, I see. In the email, probably there is a service. Something in core that will, if this one is enabled, it will find it.
I sent
thank you.
I sent the link. And if you click it.
Now. Okay, I email provider. This is a default one, and based on the name of the provider we want, it will find the implementation. Okay, so provider options, try get provider type. Okay, and then I see get async. It says create instance. It creates the instance, so it's creating dynamically. And so this is interesting because this is keyed DI resolution without using keyed DI resolution, right? Because, but maybe when it was implemented, we didn't have DI or we didn't think about using it. But here we have an option which has a dictionary of name and type. And this thing here says, okay, you want the provider named default Azure email provider, then let me instantiate it for you. That's what DI should do, because we can say register this type with this name. And then any component could say resolve me this name. So that, and instead of doing get async,
the only reason I designed it this way is even with the keyed services, problem that one of the limitation with the keyed services, there is no way to grab all these keys. You can register by key, it'll resolve it for you. So in this case, we have a way to try to grab it by the provider and resolve it manually. So that way we don't even have to.
You can still have an option to describe providers with their name and description and everything, and select it from the UI and say, I want this one. We do that a lot of places, like this describe a list of things. And then when we want the implementation, we just resolve the thing from its technical name using DI. We don't have to use also something.
Yeah, using the keyed, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Using the name here. So
yes,
we
but
still need the list.
Say, hey, DI, give me a list of all the keys that you have registered.
I agree. Right. I just say DI.
So this one,
DI.
Yeah, exactly. So in this case, we're still registering one option that stores all the names, and then we don't need to even register any providers because we can just create it using that. So it's less instances to be registered in the DI.
it's less instances registered in the DI. Then that's if that's the reason to not have something added in the DI, that's a different reason than adding metadata also. But these are two discussions. And then you can file an issue saying we should not register anything in the DI anymore because we want to, which is a valid discussion. Like there are things that we don't register in the DI because of their cardinality and maybe doesn't match the TI. But this one, it's a provider, it's a service. This is typically what we put in the DI, like the other 1,000 classes and interfaces we have in the DI. So we don't want to add more things in the DI argument, I'm not finding it. So I will assume it's there because there was metadata and there was no TDI when we implemented it. I think that could be. So anyway, here, yes, every time we get a new instance. So you see, it's a transient without saying it's a transient, it's not obvious. And it's a transient, so this thing here solves the issue that you don't have an email client for each message, but we still have a new email client for each request, okay? And email client.
It's not a request, and the reason why I say, the reason why we resolve it once per request, and then like in the emailing service, we resolve the provider once, and then we use that resolve provider to send multiple messages.
Mm-hmm.
So with this change is basically, since we resolve it only once, we will need only a single client. We don't need to have a client per message. So
I
that's
agree,
really
that's what I said.
advantage.
But what I'm saying here is that we still have one email client, a new one per request. Do you agree with that?
You have one per resolved instance, which is once, because it's only resolved in the service, in the email service.
So
email service is registered per request, right? Every time you say send a message, what we do, we give it a provider key, and we say, okay, well, give me the resolve main instance for that.
If I send a request that sends an email, it resolves whatever provider and it calls get async. It gives me a new provider instance, which gives me a new email client one.
Correct.
And my request is done. I have a new request. It's calling again this get async, right? Because this is, so we have one email client per request. Even though this thing solves the fact that we used to have one email client per email, now we have one email client per request. And my question is, what is the correct lifetime of email client? Per message definitely was not good, so this fixes it. Is email client supposed to be per request, or is it supposed to be static? And I say that because it's called email client, and HTTP client, which maybe looks a lot like this, or maybe email client was done in the same way as HTTP client, should be used statically. So
yeah, I mean, we could, well, it can be statically, right? Because you provide a connection string. But what you can do is that you can register it, the client itself in the container, and configure it. So that way, whenever you resolve it, you'll get a configured instance. And this way, the email client can be registered singleton. Who cares? Because
the question is not technically how to do that. The question is, this class here that is coming from some package, what does the documentation say? Does the documentation say you should reuse email client across the app, or you should create one and forget about it? That's my question. It's not asking how do you do that in Orchard. It's because here someone found and fixed the thing here. Great. But should we go even further and say, no, don't create a new email client every time for every request? Just create it once as a static and done. Or here, or maybe a static per tenant because you have connection string here, right? So maybe it's just per tenant. And maybe if it's not, then it should be written somewhere like we need to create a new one per request because we have this thing that changes per request or whatever. But it's not obvious here. It's hidden and nobody knows. So a question, open question. So if Hisham, when Hisham watches the meeting, you will answer. what should be the correct lifetime for email client per tenant per app based on configuration. And this one you see, because it's per request, but should we dispose it? Should we not dispose it? It will be collected. But because it's not in DI, it won't be disposed by the request scope. So I'm wondering what's it. But it's better. Whoever is sending a lot of emails should take this change. Stop. Oh, that's a contributor. I'm like, what is this kind of protocol? That's a contributor. Improve the duration shape. Discussed a lot with Mike, and now we have a better duration shape. Are there more? No, there was one more PR, right? And I believe we talked about it last week during the meeting, all the issues with localization. Yeah, I had a notepad, right? Or did we chat? Did I call you later? I don't remember. So now we have one string for the whole localization with the whole duration instead of having multiple strings. Well, or a string with multiple variables like hours and minutes, plural variables. And looks like this 1 day or n days, and it's rounded. So it's if something is admin 1 day, admin in days, it will say 1 day or n days. So if you have 1 day and 1 second, it will say 1 day. Yeah. If you have 1 day and 2 hours, it will say 1 day. If you have 1 day and 23 hours, it will say 2 days. Oh, sorry. It will say approximately 2 days. So I think it's a good compromise for being able to support the pluralization in localization. And something I saw, Mike, but I didn't want to add more, and you will tell me what you think about it. Because in the same file, we have the time span, which is a year ago in future others. But you see here in the time span, there is the 1 day. But we also do the week, month, and year. And I was wondering if instead of, in case something shows like in 365 days or 700 days, should we actually display in 1 year? The same way we do for everything, but also with week, month, year, just in case. So this works totally today, but do we want to also handle the bigger numbers like we do there? Maybe it's just a small improvement, doesn't matter much, but so that after. Like, let's merge the PR and then discuss it later. So this doesn't, what is that? Oh, this was injecting any string. Okay, this is wrong, so good catch. This is an argument that is passed there. Otherwise, we would have, well, otherwise it will not work. Because this is a string that people will localize and it will never work. Good catch. External authentication feature.
This one is worth mentioning. So there's a lot of changes here.
Go on.
So, yeah. So what happened before this PR? If you enable the users module or feature, you will automatically have the endpoints enabled for external authentication, even if you don't have external authentication enabled. That's not terrible because we still have a check in each controller. We check the settings to see if authentication should be enabled or not, but it always depended on settings. So if you have invalid settings, you could potentially expose these endpoints by mistake. So what happened with this PR is that we took all the endpoints that are related to external authentication. We put them on a new feature, and that new feature now is only enabled by dependencies, so on demand only. So if you have, for example, if you say enabled Microsoft Entra ID authentication, which require external authentication, this feature will automatically be enabled. So in other words, is that we took all these into a new feature, and that feature and all these endpoints will only be enabled when absolutely needed. So that also allow better dependency on other modules. Like in the past, registration module or feature has to be enabled if you also want external authentication, because the settings were all in the registration feature. So like you couldn't really do external authentication without having to also enable the registration feature. So it kind of was coupled. So we separated all of it. So now external authentication has its own settings that you can enable, disable, change the behavior, of how the external user is authenticated, and also the registration feature is also independent. So really, you don't really need to enable the registration feature anymore if all you need is external authentication. Now, if you want external authentication and also you want to allow registration to your site, then you can then enable the registration feature, and then you'll have both scenarios, which is external authentication plus registration. So hopefully I kind of summarized everything. And some of these settings were migrated, and it's all documented in the 2.1 release notes. It's backward compatible, so we don't have any breaking changes because we use the migration to inspect previous settings and kind of carry those settings on to the new settings. But in the 2.1 release notes, there is details on what happened to the settings. Yeah, those right here.
Right. So that just adding the dependency will enable the feature automatically.
Correct. You can't manually enable it or disable it.
Update Community Award. I love looking at the Excel sheet with the different levels of votes with I don't remember the name, so then you know the name of the voting mechanism.
Sorry, say again?
The name of the voting protocol. What's the name of the thing that?
Oh, it's ranked preferential voting.
Preferential voting. Oh, that's good. You align Azure communication implementations. So naming all the things with the correct names, explaining differences. Azure Communication Services, default Azure Communication Services provider. Kind of still confusing because this is Azure Communication Services, and there is a default Azure Communication Services.
So there is Azure Communication Services, and they have multiple channels. They have email, they have SMS, they have a bunch of different channels. So since we are using the Azure Communication Service for the SMS and also for the email channels, we just named them the same. So that way, from the UI perspective, everything is called the same and they align together.
So I have a completely unrelated question, but I saw that before and I want to mention that. Can you refresh my memory with the way we handle those settings? Because in the previous PR, I saw some code binding the settings and registering them. Oh, it wasn't in the previous PR, it was in the code here. Right. Somewhere we were binding things. I go back there. here, get section. So here we read the section named OrchardCore email Azure communication devices to this option class, meaning we will look into the configuration and something that is under that thing, all the properties under that key will bind to this option class. So under that key, like you see, email Azure communication services. If I go up there, we have default sender connection string, which will be bound to dot default sender dot connection string on this one. Okay. And we have underscores because that works on Linux and in environment variables. We don't have something else that is not copy compatible. Right? I'm also mentioning that because I looked at the files recently. This one, which is both ugly and awesome. It's ugly because there is so much stuff. It's awesome because it's all there, it's documented. So you know exactly what values you can change just after the commit. And here we will find things like this, OrchardCore Media Azure, which is one key. And I wonder why we don't have a hierarchy of OrchardCore and then the sub-object media and the sub-object Azure. In this case, instead of a one key like this and all the properties there, why isn't it organized more by category? So we would have a top level OrchardCore category like this, and then we don't need to repeat that because it's in the OrchardCore. We can just say admin. Does anyone know? I don't remember.
I don't know. I mean, I agree with you, but it's just always been this case. And I don't know, maybe it was necessary back, you know, when OrchardCore started. I have no idea.
Yeah,
But I agree with you. It's repeated.
It was the name of the feature maybe, and the point replaced by an underscore. I guess.
Yeah, maybe just to prevent. Yeah, that's interesting. It's because, you know, I work on Spire and in Spire we have examples. I will show you. I will find an example to have some examples. Here I will take some. What can I do? This one? Well, I want just to have settings. Here. See parameters in Central, and as you type things like Aspire, can't click Aspire here. No, not on this one. But yeah, so instead of having like parameters something, no, and the key, no, it's just different levels, and each level can be bound, and each level when we bind it. So in this code here, when we have the bind code here, get section and bind. If we want to say under the section OrchardCore, there is a section email, which has a section Azure Communication Services. So instead of having one key and the values, we just replace the underscore by colon. So OrchardCore colon email colon Azure Communication Services, and it will say, yeah, it's not one key like this, it's a key under the key under the key. So technically for us, it's the same thing. It's just represented this way. And then in an environment variable, instead of having the underscore and probably colon the value, then you just have also colon, I believe. Or is it underscore in this case? I have to check. At least so after working on Aspire, I'm like, and I saw that, I'm like, that feels weird. Why do we do that this way? Maybe it was just lack of knowledge about how to represent that, but it's reminding. Or maybe when we had one or a few properties, it was easier to look at it this way. Because you see, after that, the objects, because they are bound, I mean, they just map the properties. Okay, so to be continued, if anyone has ID or want to try to fix it, or knows why we don't do that. You see here, this is nicer than if we had to provide everything as a key. So completely off topic. Obsolete ILocalClock.LocalNowAsync. Obsolete. Local clock. Clock. Same thing. Local clock was an accessor, so that. So nothing changed here. Nothing changed here. Nothing here. Same thing. Not same thing. Why will you die else here? Where there is a return. I don't like this guy. I personally, yeah, maybe I wrote it, but even if there is a return, I usually write else just in case one day we remove the return and we don't realize that. So that scares me. But that works. That's fine. Okay, so there is no change here, right? Oh, is it that we
I think the change is because it's a async property accessor instead of a method.
Yeah, that feels weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's super weird.
Okay, that's not the first time we have that. Like in the new shape helper, we can do new and yeah. But I agree. Okay, so now this one is made. Okay, that's the change. This one is made public, and this thing is made. This is kept
in the interface. I guess it's obsoleted.
But it's not obsoleted in the interface. Okay, thank you. So get local noise. Okay. I don't know. I don't understand why you have to disable it on. I don't know. Icon number is obsolete. What does it mean? Should explain why we disable it. I don't know what this is. I will trust. That's good. That's good. Okay.
Yeah, I
so
don't
now,
actually think you need to disable it. That's something we use. Disable? Yeah, I think this is invalid. Oh, because he's calling. No,
it's
I
a
see why.
default
No,
interface
because
implementation.
correct. Yep.
member is obsolete.
Yeah.
And he added a default interface implementation. Didn't.
Oh, I see. Because this is obsolete. Oh, now I get it. Thank you. I'm just the third one to understand. Because we are calling local async now, which is obsolete.
Yeah.
But no, don't tell me it's obsolete.
I really
It's a
don't
default
get this
implementation.
default implementation.
Why do we have a default implementation here?
To not break anyone?
No,
Yeah, because well,
no, because we have one implementation, and the one implementation we have has the correct implementation. So we don't. And if someone creates a new interface,
No, then
maybe
get
we'll
local
break.
async method is missing, and so you need the default.
Yeah, maybe it's so for default. Okay, I get it.
yeah, that's exactly why we need.
Which is
default
why I don't get these default interface methods.
Well, I mean,
Too weird for me. I'm too old for this stuff.
So it is weird, right? But like in this case, it's important to prevent us from doing a breaking change.
Sure, but
So
that's
the only
what
reason
interfaces were originally meant to.
Agreed.
That's a different discussion, though.
Yeah, agreed.
Remove unnecessary restriction on changes to all user. I'll not find an issue and then write the fix. So yes. But I think Mike, you already worked with that.
Yeah, this one is just that tech is not needed.
Don't save content items on Get. I was involved with that. Someone filed an issue saying, hey, look, when you do a get content item sync with a list of IDs, then it saves all the items that you read. Why does it save them? I'm like, what? I confirmed, and then yes, so we have a get content item async with one ID and one with an enumerable. And the enumerable, even if it's not a new version we're asking, is calling save on the objects. And apparently is invoking an update with the same content. So this code should mean in the one with a single ID, this code was in a block, which is only if there is a new graph required, which this code is already handling, so we can remove that. Maybe your actually will be faster now because it's not saving the things it's loading when it's a list of items. Currently for updating your list notes when submitting a PR. Request updating. Okay. Enter your AssignRoles and solve permission. What? I have no idea what you just wrote. Could you?
Yeah, these permissions were duplicated, and the original ones from the roles features were not used at all anymore since Orchard 1.6, I guess.
So the feature completely removed?
No, the permissions are now obsolete. Mike can tell you more.
But is it because they are?
Yeah, so we have two different permissions named differently, but they do exactly the same thing.
Okay, so
or
we have the same
they
thing.
intended
So,
to do the same thing. However, the assigned role was never authenticated against it. So it was kind of useless from the framework perspective. For us, it's useless.
I guess that was a bug.
Yeah.
so it's not. It's. Wait. So I want to understand. I think I understand these permissions, and I think I know why I understand these permissions. Are you saying that there was the same permissions twice, and we need to remove one set of them? Or are you saying we never use them?
No.
So let's remove
So
them.
I'm saying there's two with a different ID, but they mean the same thing. So like, for example, in this case, we had AssignRoles, and then we had one that's called AssignRoles to users, right? So they do the same. So they're supposed to do the same thing. They're both were bootstrapped, right?
I see.
And
So now
they
you
are
remove the
available.
So we still have the AssignRoles to users?
Correct. And that
And
one
that
we actually are using.
Okay. So the feature is still there. I can still assign roles.
Correct. You can say, I want to be able to assign users to admins. Yep.
Yeah, but the ones mentioned here, you could assign them, but they are useless.
Okay. Because I like to be able to assign all that.
Absolutely.
The one we did that. Okay. I trusted the some code in the resolution of FileStore. Some typo. Some badge. Separate ListPart search into own shape. What are shapes? Initialize, then new shape, moving out, ListPart detail search panel. Somebody didn't read Zoltan's change about submitting a PR that will break something, because this will break something. If anyone, no, it won't break anyone, because if they updated the main template, then the main template will still work. It's just now you can also change the small template for that. Okay. Remove unnecessary serialization because it was not used. Okay. That's a big word just for removing some code that is not used. What do we have here? Daily fix ContentPartFIeldDefinition settings to object deserialization. Oh boy. Oh, what kind of code is that? Oh, that's a test. Oh, that's a test.
Yeah.
Okay, John. Go on.
No, I was just surprised that we didn't get this before releasing 2.0 because all field settings were not working.
Oh, field settings. I see what you mean. Oh, because it was not deserialized correctly. I see.
Yes.
Someone coded that. Oh, I remember this issue. Okay. Like, oh, I can't save my settings, or they are blank or whatever. And okay.
They are saved but never read back.
Is it backported?
No,
Yeah, and this is what we're going to talk about in a bit. 2.0.
Okay. Well, that looks like something that should be backported.
Correct.
Cool. It's either backported or we ship a new version.
We need to ship a new version,
with the new fixes and everything, unless they are breaking like 2.1.0, actually, yeah, something like that, or 2.0.1 with just that question. More expressive titles in the changelog. Good. Down. It's been a long time, like clean it. Back to top button feature. And, I was right. No, it's been too long. 11 hours for 2 version. With all dependencies group. This is working again. Good job, Mike. And this one, the Bernadette is updating something. Cool. Demo. One.
Yeah. Let me share my screen. Okay. So that's the docs with the new back to top button. Okay. What I want to show you is a new repository I created in order to make an OrchardCore gallery. A website that will allow OrchardCore package owners to submit their modules and their themes. So I created a few examples. I listed my packages and some of HUK that made many modules and many themes. And I also asked Zoltan to add an example with the Lombiq, some of the Lombiq modules. So that's a simple website which will allow to list your modules. You will be able to navigate into the modules. There is like a dozen of examples currently. You can navigate to the details of a module. You will have the owner of the package, the project URL, the NuGet package URL, you will be able to copy a command line to add the NuGet package to your project. There will be a description, a bigger description. There will be a difference between the description you list on the main page and the one you can specify in your module. I will show you which properties you have to set to create a new module or a new theme. You can also click on the tags, and you will have all the modules related to this tag. Or you can go to the tags page and you will see the module tags and the themes tags. Other information in the details page, you will have, if the owner specify them, you can set the versions of the package. So we'll say this package version is supported by this OrchardCore version release. And you can also specify which NuGet dependencies you rely on. So to do this, I will show you the code. So for each module, you are supposed to create a new markdown file. In the headers, using what we call the front matter properties between the three dashes at the top and at the end, you will specify the properties of your module or your themes. They are exactly the same. So we will specify the title, the permalink, a small description, an array of the dependencies of your package, the project URL, the NuGet package ID, a list of tags, the detail of the author, so the name, the URL, and the image URL you want to see when you display them on the main page or on the details page, the image, the name, and when you click the URL of the author. Then you can see the versions, which is a sub-object. And in order to list the modules by date, you can set that time when you modified it and when you want it to appear on the website. And then you can fill a bigger description using Markdown code. And for example, this one, cookie consent, it will appear like this with a link that you defined in Markdown. There are two two folders for the module and the theme. It will be available on a repository, so it will be probably OrchardCore Gallery on the under the Orchard CMS GitHub user. Package owner will be able to make a PR, and in the About page, I tried to explain how you are supposed to do. So, for example, you will fork the repository, add a new Markdown file, and I gave an example. You can just replace with your own information. Then you can submit the PR, and it will be reviewed and merged to the main repository. And it is using a static site generator, and after 1 minute it will be available online and on static pages. And there is also a feature for dark and light theme, and there is a search in which you can specify search terms to search for modules or for themes. And that's it. I don't know if you have any question.
Comments, not questions.
Yeah.
First on the theme, can you just make it wide? I think it would look better full screen. It's a comment, suggestion. The other thing is that I think you're asking too much. There's too much information. Can't we grab most of this information from NuGet somehow? So like,
No.
Instead of having to, well, we don't want to duplicate NuGet, right? So like,
Yes.
Why can't we? Like, why do we need to specify packages? Why do we need to put instructions how to install this package? Why do we need to list dependencies?
Yeah.
So let me.
Some informations are optional, but if you want to specify which version of Orchard for each which package, we have to have our own kind of definition.
So some information are not available on NuGet, some are available on NuGet. What is available on NuGet? The NuGet package ID is available on NuGet, but we need it to at least make a link. First, good. Author information, maybe it's on NuGet and maybe you don't want to show what's on NuGet because you don't have the flexibility. Dependencies, you don't have them on NuGet the same way we expose it because it might have, the package itself can have dependencies on many things like email clients, which is not a feature, for instance, from Orchard, so we need that. Description could be taken from NuGet, but maybe it doesn't have the same description. Title could be taken. Slug could be used, but it could be optional also because it can be built out of the title.
We can also require a Readme file, which is NuGet recommends, right? So if you publish your package using Readme, then we'll just pull that Readme file.
I have a better option. We said that we wanted to have a gallery even if it's not on NuGet. So you could have something that is not on NuGet, but another package URL. So I made that, for instance, I think in the issue I shared with you, Antoine, and I don't see the alternate NuGet package URL because maybe it's just on MyGet and you might want to point to it. Maybe it's not on NuGet and you want to provide information about how to get the module because it's just source code, for instance, and you might want to point to source code. But if we have a NuGet package ID, then we can generate the .NET add thing, which is so when we don't specify in the setting, in the content, it's just generated automatically, .NET add package ID. This is not in the file, it's just
just something I added because, for example, Umbraco was doing it on their marketplace. They were offering this kind of copy feature.
So I think we should have all the things in the Markdown. I will add that Zoltan made a point before we should open the repository before we have this site, such that the repository itself could be the gallery, at least. So if people want to look into the MD files, they can find the thing, even if we don't have a site yet published. And also, people can also start creating the things there. Also, I want to point that what you made here is a static site. So hosting will be super simple because it can be hosted on GitHub pages. And then if we want a custom domain, then we can use a custom domain somewhere else. But it's static pages. So there is no maintenance. It's just generating the static site.
Yeah.
Also, if there are improvements to do to the static site, it's just a static site. So as long as we have the MD files with all the data, fine, we can generate as many sites as we want for people who don't like the theme or whatever. I like the fact that you have a search engine, tags and everything. It's great. But yeah, I think, like Zoltan said, we should focus on what data we need first instead of looking at how the static site will look and how to display things. By the way, it's done. So even what you have today is very nice. So we could now focus back on the list of properties.
Yeah.
So when you just one thought, sorry, you added here a link, right? You added a link to another, or like a markdown file. Like can I say reference README file, for example? Can I say, hey, my package has a README file,
yeah,
just render my
idea.
README file.
That could be a good idea, actually, to, instead of providing the body here, to provide the URL of an alternate README file that exists. Yeah, so yeah, note that Antoine has the feedback from this format.
But also, will that be searchable?
The site itself by Google. Oh, is the content searchable? Depending on the static site, maybe yes. Maybe the static site generator supports that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, if we can include just a reference to the README file, which is in my package, then I don't need, it's less touches for me, because last thing I want, every time I want to update documentation to a package, I need to submit a new PR, a new PR, a new PR, right? Well, maybe I don't care for that. If I can update the README file in my package, then it'll be awesome if this site generator can just include that somehow, and I don't have to go and update
if you can point to a GitHub raw URL, that would be much easier, I believe, than saying, oh, it's in my NuGet package, because good luck with the site generator to download the NuGet package, extract the README, and include it. If it's a URL to your GitHub containing the README, definitely, I'm sure it should be easy to do. I had those comments on the data that I see here, but because you picked some of the suggestions I made and you're still including some of the things I think we should not be there, like publication date. I don't want users to be able to set a publication date that will change the order how it appears. I'm not even sure I want the modules to be displayed by publication date. I don't know. Maybe if we need a recent submission, maybe. But this thing is weird to me. But the main thing I don't like in the repository is the fact that there is SRC content module. I think the content should be at the top level under content and done. And all the rest for the static site generation and everything should be in a different folder that I don't have to check and that can change anytime we want if we want to change the static site generation logic. But the content itself should be king in this repository, and maybe just have the content and have another repository for the static site generation. Because because today I have to go in a subfolder of SRC. No, it's not SRC. It's just the modules and the themes. So maybe if you can have two repositories, one for the site, one for the content, that would be great. Because this way we don't have to care much about it. And you can decide to have different owners, right? Like we could allow lots of people to then review and contribute to the modules themselves and then not be bothered by the static site generation itself.
It was a second repository. It would be like how do we call it, a Git sub repository?
Why would it? I don't think it would have to be a sub module. I think you can have a site that just clones another one when you start the generation process. Today you must have a GitHub action, right? That starts the scripts to run the generation, to run Astro. Then the first line of this script is git clone the content in this folder, run Astro. This way the static site is in a different.
Not really how a static site generator is working. Most of them, you have your data. Sometimes your data folder.
Perfect. Show me the script that generates Astro. You must have a script somewhere. Action. Show me the action.
Yeah. So
Want
I
it in
will
the
try to
.github
find
folder?
it.
The .github folder, don't you have an action to trigger when
An action? Yeah.
here, deploy, boom. The first line, line 11, okay, or jobs, build, okay, on. Line 26, check out repository using Git, install, build, and upload the side output. Line 26, you add a new step, which is check out content repository in a specific folder. Or line 28, after you check out this local repository, you then check out another repository in a folder that is called /src/content. This way, locally, you will have the public side, the static site generator, and it will inject in the content src folder the content of another repository that only contains the content. And then you don't change anything. Make sense? So it's not a submodule, it's just you separate the thing. And then your documentation can explain to users, if you want to try to generate the static site, clone the thing here, clone the thing there, and run it, or run the script. And if you go on the content only repository, we just need to explain this is the format of the module of the files. Create a file there, done. And this way they don't have to care about how we generate the static site. I think that would be cool for simplicity. And if tomorrow you want to use another repository to test another static site generator, then you can. You just point to the folder to do the same thing. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll have, I'm sure, lots of feedback on that. That's great already. So as soon as we can have a repository with just the content, we can just show that to people, and people will start creating files, and then we will have fun generating static sites with all the content they provide.
This is great, though, Antoine. Great job.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Anton. Good start.
This site is so fast, faster than Orchard.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Awesome. Good ending, good demo. It's been a while.
I know we're running behind time, but if you look at that release 2.0.1 and see if you have any issues with the release in 2.0.1.
There is already something prepared.
I put in an issue, and I just want to make sure we're okay with those 4 PRs to port back before I do that.
What? I thought it was just one issue. About 22 issue. This one is like purge. So much commands and code for a network exception. This one is the big fix that's going to ship. This one is an optimization that could be an issue. One is a bug. So this is, and you picked 4 things to backport or to ship, or is it containing all the things we merged since 2.0?
No, just 4 with 4 PRs.
Okay, so you want to fork main to have that, meaning not everything that is currently on main is ready at 2.0.1. Okay, that's sensible. Sorry, that's my French. Sensible decision. I have to translate. After the same words in French. And this one, this is the same code. It's just compressive. But this is current user reports. Interesting. Why? Why did it work before? User time zone selector.
It did not work. It throws an reference exception.
It threw an exception, yeah. Line 35 with a throw exception. But in this case, I'm actually suggesting that we We even check the user time zone ID. And if the time zone ID is null, we return null result. I think that's what we should do. And the reason for that is because null result is returned in, I think there was another, was that selector or some other class that checks for null.
Okay, that does the check for that and then return something. Okay. Like unknown. Okay. Oh, because it's a selector. Okay. The selector pattern in Orchard, meaning that you have multiple of them, and as soon as one says, I found something, this is what it takes. Probably, right? Maybe it's not the way we do that, actually. Maybe we just pick one and then.
But we sort them by priority. So first we checked, we sort them by priority, and then
so we have
pick
n
one,
of them, and the first one that returns. Good. And there is a say special one. Null. Oh, you say if you return null, it will handle that. Oh, because null is a valid result for a selector, which says I have no opinion. Yeah, null works.
Yeah, null works, but and that's the code suggestion. Look at the difference. If the time zone ID is also null, we return. Otherwise, what's going to happen is that we're going to assume that because we have a user, that user is going to have a time zone, which is still invalid.
Okay, well, that's better. Okay. So far, with you explaining it this way, I understand. So maybe someone else will find a reason not to do that. But I like it. I mean, that's error prone, that works. Too many comments already.
There was a lot of discussion.
Singable. Must be a good change. Wow. Great, good job.
So we're good with all these four.
Yeah,
We are
I'm good.
reporting back.
Are you
Okay,
good?
cool. Yeah.
Good. Ship it.
Yeah, we're just gonna wait on this one to be fixed, and
Okay.
then we'll merge it and then ship.
You know how to ship. Good. Thanks, everyone. See you on
Thank you.
Thursday. I might be
Thank you.
Thursday. I don't think I will be late. I will send you, but I will be there. Maybe I will.
I don't likely to be there, by the way. I
Okay.
won't be there.
So
Thank
see
you.
soon. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. See you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.